right. We're in action. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. All right. So I did do this. I did do a written part to this as well that I will send your way, but I find I can ramble a lot better when I am talking. So I think I'm going to go with that. I'm going to break these up into like separate little videos, because like in the little write-up you say you want us to kind of put it into groups and topics and themes, so I am going to do that just with each little video. So I've kind of, what I'm going to do is break it up into the groups of, I kind of answered all these questions for middle childhood, and then I answered the questions for more adolescent, and then I'm going to like quickly touch on like adult and like being an adult and the play that I, experience as an adult, and I have done a little art piece for each one, so I'm going to break it up into that. So that's kind of the plan. That is the plan. So the first part I'm going to kind of do is like my little introduction. So when I was thinking about these questions, I was answering them and I was going through, and something kind of kept popping up in my mind when I was like answering all the questions and thinking about all the things I did when I was a kid. And it was really like the idea of like the privilege that I had to do all of the amazing things that I did in childhood, and what my play consisted of, and my leisure, and just the opportunities that I had. So yeah, my whole thing, there's going to be like a common theme of the privilege that I had, and I am going to touch on that like quite a bit throughout. And like, yeah, privilege was a word that I wasn't obviously fully aware of in middle childhood and even like adolescence. Like to me, the play and the leisure that I experienced was just like my normal. It was my everyday, kind of my like expected. I was kind of blissfully unaware that the kinds of play and leisure that I participated in, as well as who I played with and where I played, was really, really like deeply rooted in the privilege that I did have. And as I've grown up and into adulthood and, working with children and being in the field, I've really kind of reflected pretty heavily on my own childhood and the opportunities that I did have, the amazing opportunities I had. So yeah, I that's going to be kind of a theme throughout. And yeah, so that's, I'm gonna talk about that quite a bit. And then I'm also gonna kind of touch on, and it was stated in the one of the articles, that kind of play is not linear. It grows, expands, it declines, it changes, and I'm gonna touch on that as well. And I'm going to, show you my artwork and touch on the different stages of my life, so middle childhood and adolescence, and then a little bit as an adult. And yeah, the idea of privilege is going to kind of be intertwined within all of that. I wanted to get an elephant out of the room before I continue. That poster behind me is a movie. I am not promoting drug use. It's like one of those old PSA movies about like, don't do drugs, kids. So anyways, yeah, not promoting drug use. Ignore that. It's a movie. So anyways, back to play. I'm going to start off with I'm going to go through who, where, and what, as you had for our questions. So I'm going to start with who I played with in middle childhood. So here's my little picture for middle childhood, like ages 8 to 12. It probably looks really crazy right now with no context, but I am going to explain. So don't worry. Okay. So who I played with, is kind of where my privilege is shown, that I was thinking about. So this is where my little house comes in here. This is my little blue house. I grew up in Hilden, which is a teeny tiny little middle class suburban land outside of Truro. Very, lower to upper middle class, safe neighborhood, which is where my privilege starts, that I grew up there, where there was families on every single corner. Just I lived close to the elementary school, so there's just so many neighborhood kids to play with. And kind of going back to some of the articles, that's where I experienced that anticipation part of play, where I was anticipating every day what child was gonna knock on my door to play with that day. I just had just a crazy amount of neighborhood kids to play with. So that was some kids live in apartment buildings, or they live in a neighborhood that they don't have the ability to just go out and play in the streets and have a bunch of friends around, and or they live somewhere where there's not a lot of kids and stuff like that. So I was thinking about that, my privilege of growing up in this very suburban middle class place where I just had an endless amount of kids to play with. So that that is the who I played with, just every neighborhood kid that was on the block. And yeah, so I played with the neighborhood kids, and then again back to privilege because of our financial stability, I guess you could say. I got to play with my family as well a lot. My mom didn't work from the time I was born till I was about 10. So she just stayed home with me, and in the summers just took me everywhere. So I did, I got to I got to play with my mom a lot, my family. And then, so especially in the summer, she would take me everywhere. So yeah, because of our, economic privilege, I did get to spend a lot of time with my mom, because she didn't have to go out and work and not be home, or put me in care after elementary school or whatever. She's always there. So again, going back to that privilege piece, because of our financial situation, I got to play a lot with my mom, and to play a lot with my family, and and also play in the neighborhood with all the neighborhood kids. Now we're on to the where did I play. Also, this little money here is representing our financial stability, which is kind of what that privilege was a huge part of my play and leisure as a child. And I also wanted to comment on the fact that in middle childhood, 8 to 12, I didn't have, I think it was more play rather than leisure. And then as I get older, it turns more into leisure, less into play, until I become an adult again, or an adult, and I'm okay, now I'm playing again. But so it was a lot of play. But yeah, so in middle childhood, where I played, this is outdoors, outside 24/7. And again, comes back to my privilege of having a neighborhood that I could just go out and play in the streets, and there wasn't cars racing by, and we could be out until dark, because it was a very safe neighborhood, and there wasn't any crime or anything like that. I think I've seen an ambulance come to Hilden twice, a police car maybe a couple times in my entire life. So it was just I had the privilege of growing up in a very safe, comfortable suburban neighborhood. So where I would play would just outdoors, and that's some of the categories of plays: outside, inside, but just outside 24/7. We would go in the backwoods and just explore for hours. So that is where my trees come up. This is the backwoods of my house, and there's just like endless amounts of woods around my house, which was really cool. So this is where, yeah, the beer bottle comes in. Looks kind of crazy, I know, but it says Beer Bottle Haven, which is where what we coined these woods down by my house, because it's kind of where all the teenagers would go like party, and there's just like a bunch of smashed beer bottles everywhere, which like doesn't sound very safe, but yeah, so that those woods were all the smashed beer bottle. We would play there for hours, and yeah, we coined it Beer Bottle Haven. So that's what the crazy beer bottle is for there. But yeah, we played there like every day. And just like so much pretend play and so much like adventuring. We just we'd make up every single scenario you could think of, like in those woods. We were like Indiana Jones, because my friend was super into Indiana Jones, and we were just like creating things and like using all these like loose parts and sticks to like build little houses. And we would even do like pretend play within the houses. And oh, I was cooking and I was cleaning, and doing all those things that when you're a kid you think, oh, that's what women are supposed to do. They're cooking and cleaning in their little house. But yeah, we would make these little huts and cook and clean and play house inside of them in the woods. And like, so that was what we were doing most days. And then like, I, again, back to the privilege and financial stability, like a lot of the kids would come to my house because I had like a trampoline and a pool, a little pool, mind you, just like a blow up one, but still, like, so again, where we would play is like in my backyard. On the trampoline, we'd do a lot more like, yeah, like, another category of play is like humor, and like, oh, we would do like wrestling WWE matches on my trampoline and pretend we were, in the WWE. So like a lot of just like made up silly scenarios, which was awesome. Um, and yeah, on top of like the financial stability aiding in like having those materials at our house, so all the kids came to our house, um, it also aided in me having like access to transportation. Like my parents had 2 cars, so when my father was at work, especially in the summer, like my mom just drove me like everywhere, like different places to play. Like, oh my god, we went to beaches and parks and wildlife centers and day camps, and like the list goes on. And like saying it out loud sometimes, I'm like, oh my god, like I kind of was a bit of a spoiled brat, but it's just like every day we were in a different place and exploring somewhere new. And then I also have been like very heavily into sports. My little soccer ball, I played like every sport known to man. Soccer was like my main one when I was a kid, but basketball and rugby and skiing and like the whole kit and caboodle. So again, like our access to vehicles gave me the opportunity to play sports all over the province. And like my mom was driving me everywhere. My dad was driving me to every soccer game, like all the way from the valley to Cape Breton, and as well as like traveling far distance to go to different ski hills. Like because of my privilege and because of our access to transportation and being able to afford that kind of gas, I got to participate and play all over the province with sports and such as well. I really am rambling, but now we're on to the what. Like, what was my specific kind of plan? I think I already kind of touched on that a bit with a lot of pretend play, but I really like the quote from the Hogan article talking about like play is freely chosen. It's like engaging. It's fun, and that's the kind of play that I really, really, really focused on. And so just play for play. Like there wasn't, I mean, yes, I did sports, and that also is a form of play. Like I read in the articles, it's just like a different kind of play where there is like a goal at the end of it. But my like favorite type of play was just when we were in the woods making stuff up, really centered around like pretend play. And like I said, we would just like go to the woods and make up these stories and make up our own little rules to these stories. And like we would play this made up game called like Olivia Soup or something, where like I would, I don't know, I would run and they would catch me and they would put me into this little jail and call it Olivia Soup. And there was, I don't know, doesn't make any sense, but there's all these like rules around it that we had to follow, and like, you know, the rules of our little made up game that we made. You know, we'd play like bad guys and we had to disarm them and all that kind of stuff. And I also participated in like loads of risky play. It was just like climbing trees and four-wheeling and skiing, which skiing I did break my leg doing when I was like 6, so it really was risky play. And but that also is intertwined in my privilege, where like my parents didn't stop me from doing it, um, and they like let me take those risks because you know, my dad had a good health plan through work, and we didn't really have to worry about like medical expenses or paying for an ambulance or paying for when I broke my leg, like getting my cast on and all that kind of stuff, or like any medications afterwards, because like I was privileged enough to have a dad that had this like really good health plan, so he didn't really have to worry about, you know, me injuring myself. And I got to participate in that risky play because, like, again, privilege, didn't have to worry about, you know, medical expenses and stuff like that. So again, that privilege coming in left, right, and center. So yeah, lots of pretend play in the woods, lots of running around, and then yeah, lots of sports that I just had like, yeah, like very lucky to have access to the funds to put me in all these sports and drive me around the province and blah 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 blah. So yeah, just really really lucky in that sense. But yeah, so my play was just like it really strengthened, like in the readings we talk about strengthening the mind and the body. Like I had so much interpersonal communication with my friends, and like, yes, we'd get in little tiffs when we didn't like the rules or someone would get hurt and we'd have to work through that. But then also like physical strength that it took to just like, I don't think I could ever do the things I did when I was a kid. But yeah, it's just lots. It just, my play was just, yeah, very, very physical, very emotional, very social, um, and just like, yeah, pleasurable. Just, you know, we'd play and we'd play, and that would incite more play, and yeah, it's just imaginative and really great.